Hello, friends.
Hello.
Welcome to the Cinemondo podcast, which is what this is,
Right here, right now.
with Kathy and Burk, right here.
Talking about our favorite stuff, horror movies.
Yeah, because it is the season. It's the October. It's the October, and that's when you're supposed to watch horror movies nonstop, right? Put them on
I love it
infinite loop.
because they're on all the time now. Like it's like all of a sudden there's all this new horror on streaming. All of a sudden there's like, movies in theaters,
Yeah,
there's new horror movies, there's like this everybody's talking about it. So everybody's watching horror, enjoying horror, and that's the only month where that's allowed.
and all the Halloween decoration pop up stores all over town. This is
Yes.
always fun.
So fun.
And seeing neighbors who decorate. I used to decorate, and I think someday maybe I'll do it again. Maybe I'll make a little podcast about it or something if I do something fun. But I used to get pretty elaborate with it.
Mm. Yeah, I simplified it. I just got some little glowy ghosts that I hung from my porch and my tree in front of the house. So it looks like a little, and it's nice because they're kind of sparkly, glowy, and then you walk through, it's like a little Halloween wonderland. But it's very
Oh,
simple. It's very cute.
so
I'll post a
cute.
video of it.
We have some construction going on in our front yard, so we can't let anybody in. So we have to
Mm,
do something outside of the gate, outside of the
mm.
fence, and otherwise we're
Trick or treat.
liable. We're a liability.
Yeah,
But
don't let little kids in a construction site.
or maybe that could be the horror thing. We could put people impaled on rebar and
Horror
stuff.
construction.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
look at all the injuries you can get on a construction
Yeah, see
site.
how fun this is?
It's horrifying.
It's terrible.
But anyway,
Anyway.
it's the funny thing about it is that you always hear people saying, it's time to start watching horror films. But it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I don't know. I watch movies like that all the time. Or some
Yeah.
people include science fiction, any kind of genre, kind of unusual, interesting kind of films.
Yeah.
And I think people like us kind of have Halloween all year round.
Yeah.
But we'll pander. We'll go ahead and just do this thing on October where we kind of make it look like now is the time when you're supposed to watch movies like
I
that.
consider the year my reconnaissance of finding the movies I can then suggest to people in October when they're like, "What's a scary movie?" And then I have
Yeah,
all this, this knowledge to share.
right.
I
Well,
like to do that.
and I also feel like that a lot of the movies that we talk about, we've done this with the I think we did this. We started with the 70s, right? We did the
Mhm.
80s, and then
Yeah.
and did we bypass the 90s?
Yeah, I think we did. I guess we shouldn't have bypassed the 90s. We
Maybe
were
if we
running out
have
of time.
yeah, maybe next year we'll do the 90s.
Yeah, maybe we'll start
But
earlier.
but we're zeroing in now on the present day, sort of. I mean,
Mhm.
like 20 years ago, the 2000s.
That's
And honestly, I was like, what am I gonna what is there in the 90s,
I know.
in the
I was thinking
2000s?
2000s, is there anything good? Because after you've
Yeah,
done the 70s to 80s, those are all the great ones. So then you're like, there aren't any good ones. And then as I was searching, I'm like, wow, there are some great ones. So
I know.
we decided maybe we should just go right to 2000 because it was an intentional choice to do this.
Yeah,
Not that we're bad at math, which we
yeah.
are.
It's
Yes.
but we did our best. We looked through the 2000s, and much to my surprise, I found some really good ones in
Really
there.
good ones.
If you want to have a 2000s nostalgia themed Halloween movie night, here's a good list that you can do. Not all of them, in my opinion. I think science fiction is included in there. I don't think it all has to be like skeletons and stuff like that for Halloween, ghosts
I
and
think for
things.
Halloween, it should be pretty horror sci-fi ish. I mean, it shouldn't be hard sci-fi for Halloween. It doesn't feel like the mood because Halloween is, kind of gothic
Yeah,
and
but if you
cool.
went to somebody's Halloween decoration and the theme was alien, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
But if it was Star Wars, it would be like it's a little not Halloweenish.
That's sort of a year-round one too.
Yeah,
That can be anytime. Star Wars
but
is always good.
Yeah, you can just permanently make your house look like Star Wars.
I do want to, as a horror fan, I do want to just jump out here in front, since Halloween Ends just came out. And it is Halloween. I want to talk about that for a
Yeah.
second because I watched it. I just want to talk about complete
Should I
utter
cover my
garbage.
ears?
No, because I don't want you to watch it. I want to
Okay.
spoil it for you so you feel no need to watch it because it was the worst. It's probably the worst movie I've ever seen.
Oh
It's
my
right at the top.
God.
It jumped over some of my really other terrible ones. So I'm just letting you know because I think when you have a movie like Halloween, and so granted we're in the modern day now, so I'm just going to be quick. But
Right.
when you have a property like Halloween, which seems like a gimme, it seems like an easy one to just it's a formula, it works. They've already fucked up the first two because they were way too big. I mean, how the first one was okay, but it still didn't feel like Michael Myers. It was like Jason for Friday the 13th. Super violent, loud,
Right.
action. I guess that's modern audience. And then the second one, sideline Jamie Lee Curtis. The whole thing happened in the hospital. It was just
Right.
terrible, ugly.
Yeah.
And then this one, Michael Myers isn't even in it. And then
Oh.
when they do find him, he's hiding in a sewer like a little wimp, like he's all, hiding. And it's like, no. And then Lori is like walking around like, the Jamie Lee Curtis character is walking around like she does, it's like she's in a dream state. She's all like, let's make cookies. And it's just weird. I mean, and then they focus on a character we've never seen before, and they made him like the hero of the story, and he was super creepy, and you didn't like him, and he was like the bullied kid that decides he wants to be Michael Myers. And so he kind of impersonates Michael Myers. That's his sort of
Okay.
game. But I'm like, this is not what we signed up for. You said this is Halloween Ends. You showed their final, fight to the death or whatever. That's sort of the
Yeah.
big face off. And then you cheated us through the entire fucking film by making Michael Myers like, the slave to this stupid kid for no reason. I mean, it's just
Right.
terrible decision making on every level. And then the fight at the end was super lame in a kitchen. And yeah, I'm gonna spoil this thing. But then they have someone, the granddaughter gets involved. It's like, I want Lori and Michael. That's all
Right.
we need. We
I
don't
know.
need these
Yeah.
people. Why are you involving a granddaughter we don't even like, a kid we don't even know, like all these extra people, the whole neighborhood getting involved? Like, I don't care about all these stupid people in the neighborhood. I want Lori and Michael. So it
And
was
this is
badly
the.
staged, badly done. They showed Michael Myers' face way too much. He's an old grizzled, toothless geezer, and
Oh
terrible.
no.
So yeah, hated it, hated it. So
And
we're
this
gonna move
is
on to
the
good films now.
this is the era of fan service. You would think that they would realize that there is a fan base for these films, or I don't know. Is there? I don't know. Does the brand marketing still work with Halloween, or are they just banking on the word Halloween, associating it with the season of Halloween? Do you think people that saw this movie are familiar with the John Carpenter Halloween
Maybe, and they probably
anymore?
think it's really tame, even though
Right.
that's the genesis. Because sometimes, and technically it kind of was, but it kicked off the whole slasher
Yeah.
genre, and well, Black Christmas technically
Yeah.
did, but this one came out big. So I just feel like when and I love slasher films. I don't have a ton in the 2000s slasher films. They kind of weren't in vogue as much. There's a
Right.
few. I have a couple that I liked. But when you have, these franchises that then these so-called fans take over and decide to modernize, it still seems like if you're really a fan, which I don't think these people were, clearly we're not. Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, they are not fans. There's no way
Right.
they were fans. They saw a property, they go, I remember this movie. Let's do something cool and loud and crazy, and just completely polluted it with nonsense.
That's
It just made a
sad.
bad horror movie. I mean, even if it wasn't Halloween, it's just a bad horror movie. The kills were
Because if it was
okay.
really horror fans, you'd think they would get this. If they got their hands on this property, they're like, let's show the fans what they've always wanted to see. Let's have the big blowout. Let's
Yeah.
do it in the tradition. Not necessarily. I hate the word tradition with things, but let's do it in a way that people are going to say, yes, this is what it is. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Eh.
Jamie Lee Curtis is a badass. You don't
Yeah.
need to make her grandma in the kitchen making cookies and going to the drugstore. And literally, this was in the movie. Drugstore,
Yeah.
walking around, trying to. And so that was just useless. And then she kind of takes the stupid bullied kid under her wing for no reason. She doesn't know who this guy is. She knows that he killed some kid by accident when he was younger, babysitting. And that was his whole big, oh my God, it was on the anniversary of Michael Myers.
Uh,
Just Awful. Do not see this movie. Do not
Okay.
even see it for free on Peacock. Avoid at all costs. Terrible.
I won't.
Don't. Okay, there.
But
I've ruined it for you.
rewinding back to the
Let's
2000s.
go to the 2000s when
Let's
things
go
were
back to the
good.
2000s. You were saying that there's not a whole the slasher thing wasn't a deal so much. And what I think was that it was sort of like the dawn of the found footage horror films with
Mhm.
things like um
Mhm.
what was it, paranormal
Yeah.
and those kind of things. Then and it was also that there was kind of a moment in there where you had things like The Ring, where
Yeah.
it was these curse kind of stories.
Yeah.
That was based on a Japanese film, which I recommend, but I think it's 90s film.
Yeah. This is with
And
Naomi Watts.
the yeah, that movie I think kind of started the 2000s off on a direction because it was
Yeah.
so popular, and there was a lot of film. It seemed like there was a lot of films that were kind of trying to do the Ring thing.
Well, I think Blair Witch.
And
It
Blair
was
Witch, yeah.
1999
Yeah.
technically, but it kicked off the entire found footage, and then Paranormal just took it to the next level and just really,
Yeah.
it just exploded. So,
And then there was a ton of others like
Mhm.
record, and
Yeah.
whatever else.
Right.
I was never super into those. I felt
Mm.
like it was kind of fun, but I don't know, never got too much into it. But there's one movie that I think about that's kind of like an outlier. It's not a found footage film. It's not a supernatural curse, but it's based on a Stephen King novella, I think, The Mist.
Ah, yes, The Mist. Yeah, that was a very bad segue into The Mist. For
Was it?
found footage that we were going to talk about. No, we're not going to talk about it.
Oh, did you want to keep talking about the found footage stuff? Is there more?
Well, we were going to talk about Paranormal Activity. Oh, I'm
But,
all over the place right now.
starts with a P.
I'm a mess.
But it's a
Uh,
yeah, I mean it's a cool concept. I think one of the things about it that was so cool and that filmmakers. Oh, okay. Now we're going to talk about The Mist. Okay,
yeah, let's go to The Mist. Let's
I was
forget the
talking
whole
about
found footage thing.
Paranormal Activity, but The Mist was pretty shocking. That ending everybody talks about.
Oh, the ending's the best thing about it.
It's one of those borderline sci-fi kind of horror films, and there was a I think the next year was another film that kind of had the similar DNA called Cloverfield, which
I would
was
consider that found footage.
I was about to say, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a found footage horror sci-fi movie. It's like a whole bunch of things.
Right. But real quick, I want to talk about The Mist since we're on it.
Yeah,
So I love The Mist. I read the short story, loved it. Had a great opening
Yeah.
scene, a great closing scene, like just amazing. And then I also like how people started trying to cope with it by getting very religious, and that
Yeah.
Stephen King loves to poke fun at religion
right.
justifiably. So he would make it like all this weird stuff's happening, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's the Lord. He's coming down. The end is near.
Right.
Rapture." And
Well, it
it's
looks
like,
like the
nope,
apocalypse,
it's just science.
Right.
Basically. So I love the idea of this apocalypse, and these people trapped in a very ordinary, classic Stephen King, they're just ordinary human activity. Let's go to the grocery store. Now all of a sudden that's become like the center of your nightmare, where they're trapped by a bunch of alien-esque creatures that
Yeah.
come in with this mist that comes
And what are
in.
your weapons? Like a zucchini
Yeah.
or maybe
Yeah,
if
can
you
you
had
find like a stapler or something? I don't
Right.
know. So not a lot of weapons in the grocery store. I mean, maybe in the back there's some wood they can turn into something, but
Right.
they didn't have a lot. So but at least they could eat. Some
Yeah.
people were trapped in a lot worse places. Then they also had the Mist series that was pretty good. That was a well produced series.
Yeah.
Same thing, a little longer. It was the same story basically, but the Mist ending is just perfect.
It's
And that's why you
classic,
need
yeah,
to
it's
watch
pretty
The Mist.
legendary.
Yeah, I mean, I found it a little like, okay, the effects were okay. They had some decent actors in it. I love the making fun of the religious woman in there. and that was good. And the survival instinct isn't about laying down and reading your Bible. It's about you got to figure this out and cope and come up with a smart way out of here. You got to get out of
Right.
this. I mean, the whole point was to try and get away from the store and getting out of the mist. And it's kind of the end of the world thing. Like, is it the end of the world? Can we survive? So that's a great storyline in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, good. That was one of the best Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah, and the idea of the way it's presented with the mist, everything you can't see very far into the distance. So that to me sort of makes it a real good example of isolation horror, where you're not just isolated in the grocery store, but you're isolated in the grocery store within just like a foot or so outside of it. When you look out the window, you can't see down the street. You can't see into the parking lot. It's just
Right.
a cloud out there. That to
And
me is like that's a creepy idea right there.
and I think this was directed by Frank Darabont, who
Yeah.
is like a good director, like
Oh
fine
yeah,
art
yeah.
director. So you're
Yes.
getting someone who did he did that other Stephen King book, the Tim Robbins, what's it called?
Was it Shawshank Redemption?
Shawshank Redemption. So that's another great adaptation. And he also created Walking Dead. He ended up
Yeah.
leaving the show because they said they screwed him over or something. But
Yeah, he helped create
it was
that
great.
show from the
So,
comic book source material, and
right.
yeah, he brought good stuff to that,
Yeah.
and he's a good he's one of those people who I think works good with the Stephen King material.
Well, he knows how to bring the human aspect, which a lot of people, they concentrate too much on the supernatural and the scares and the the monsters, whereas it's not scary until you care about the people.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
also another reason Halloween ends didn't work out. So, you just hated everything. I'd let them all die. You didn't care.
Aw.
But real quick, let's ease into Cloverfield again by talking about Paranormal Activity. Just real
Yeah.
quickly, we didn't talk too much about it, but Paranormal Activity was one of those. It was the found footage jumped off of Blair Witch by
Right.
bringing it home. Like Blair Witch was out in the woods, they were talking to a camera. Now it's like surveillance cameras. They're filming they're filming stuff in the house and they're seeing weird stuff. And I like the idea of normal life. And then all of a sudden, that's weird. Let's figure this out. And then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and creepier and creepier. And it was just everything just in this normal house. And I think that's what made it
Yeah.
kind of scary, is that whole aspect of not knowing what it is and making it very domesticated in a weird way, like hitting you at home where you should feel safe.
Yeah, and if you've ever had a security camera in your workplace or home and you were looking back at footage, there is a certain creepiness to it
Yes.
inherently. Just seeing, when if you fast forward through it, or if you're looking at your Ring cam or whatever, and there's a weird thing. I don't know. It's maybe just me, but
Nope.
even that picture right there on the
Yes.
on the cover,
Yeah.
when you look at that, it's just like a normal bedroom. And if you were
Yep.
looking at that and that's in your house, but then when you look out that doorway and you're watching footage of your own house, I'm sure maybe everybody thinks this when they're watching that footage. They're like, what if there was something out there that moved and here I am fast asleep. I'm looking at a picture of me
Yeah.
sleeping in the bed and there's something out in the hall that shouldn't be there, and that.
Right.
That's a creepy thing, because I think it's related to that weird fear of when you come home late at night, if you live alone, or if you're with the other person who lives in your house and you're in the car and you come home late at night and you pull up to your house. How would you feel if you saw the blinds open a little bit inside your house, or if you
Right.
saw a shadow move, something is in your house? It's that the reason it works so well, I think, with the security cam idea is that your home is your sanctuary. Anything that invades your house is this horrifying violation, and I
Yeah.
think that's what it played on. I also think movies like Paranormal Activity, and Blair Witch particularly, are just brilliant examples
Yeah.
of economy in filmmaking.
Mhm.
Basically shot with a security camera, and Blair Witch was
no
shot
money.
with a handheld camcorder, and I know there's more to it than that. It's not like they just, like in Blair Witch, I think some people watch it and they're like, oh, these kids went out and shot this dumb horror film. It's
Oh,
like,
there's more to it than that.
there's a lot more to
Yeah.
it. There was a production crew on that, and there was a lot of care and, technique and craft involved in building that film. And that's why nobody else has made one. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was as effective as that.
And it's
But
also that creepy thing of what's in the dark corner. And when you see this, they're looking going, "What is that?" Like they see
yeah,
something move or they see a weird shadow that shouldn't be there. And
in
that's
your
what's
own
creepy about it.
home,
It's not these huge creepy like there's a guy in your
right?
house. There's this weird shit like, "Do I see eyes in that
Yeah,
closet?" Like what? So that's what's great about it. It put Oren Peli on the map. It put Blumhouse on the map. That
yeah,
started a whole genre of films. And I personally love found footage. I love it. I feel like it
yeah.
makes it feel immediate and personal. I just think it's great. So I've been a big fan of found footage. I keep watching it,
I
and
should
and
go
people
back and
keep
rewatch them
innovating.
again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Paranormal Activity almost got a little bit too tame. Like there was a lot of long scenes where really nothing happened, and that's
Right.
fine to a point. But at some degree, there needs to be something in the corner, and you can't do so many fake out nothing's happening scenes. So, but the first one's pretty tight. I really enjoyed that, and you cared
Yeah.
about the people. So and it's also about our relationship with technology too, like trying to research it and getting your cameras up and looking at camera, what sound and cameras, and it's so scary.
Yeah.
um okay.
And
Next.
video, video was sort of coming in. Everybody was at that point. I think that was on the cusp of everybody videotaping everything all the time.
Mhm.
So the idea of a video of your life was becoming more of a normal thing.
Yeah.
And video itself, just the look of it and the feel of it and the ever presence of it, plays into the look of a film I want to mention called 28 Days Later, because that was I believe the first entire feature film, sort of a good, decent budget film that was actually shot on video.
Mm.
And it wasn't found footage, but it was shot on video, so it had this sort of rough-edged documentary look. It had the feel of found footage in a way, in the way that you feel like you're watching something that somebody just ran out there in the street and shot with their
Yeah.
video camera, and that to me makes it very effective. It's a zombie movie. It's a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Again, sort of
Is that
veering.
2000s?
28 Days Later, 2002.
Oh, okay.
I believe. And
That seems longer ago that came out.
yeah, but then there was
But then also had a
was
few sequels.
Yeah, the sequels.
Yeah.
But it just, to me, that had a real edgy, scary feel to it. And
Yeah.
I think partly because it looked so handmade or homemade that you don't expect to see production value in such a thing. When you shoot a video, it's like it's just people in their house walking around saying hi,
Yeah.
hey. But then when you see a video something that looks like a video, and there's crowds of zombies and abandoned cities and all these things that you don't normally see on video, it gives it this sense of urgency, like you're seeing something that
Mhm.
somebody just shot.
That's funny. I did not get that from that. I mean, this is Danny Boyle, who
Yeah.
is, really great action and does really great editing. I don't remember that being very video feeling. I have to watch that again.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not. I mean, it's not like bumpy, shaky cam type video, but there's just a quality to it that gives
Right.
it kind of a not as polished of a look that films normally have. And I've always felt like that kind of adds to its the edginess of the scariness of it.
Right. And so then in the same found footage thing, we have Cloverfield, which was
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams and big studios deciding, hey, let's make a big budget found footage.
Right.
And I remember seeing this in the theater, and it was like they were just borderline of making you nauseous. It's a very fine line.
It definitely had shaky cam.
Very fine. And they also broke the rules a little bit, which I don't like. Like if you're doing found footage, you have to commit to the found footage. It needs to be only found footage. And that's just my own rule. Like if you're going to have a film and then if you're going to then pause it in your universe, we're watching the video as part of it, I get that. But if you're going to
Right.
pretend like, hey, this is all found footage of people just filming themselves, and then sometimes conveniently cut away and have it like a third party omnipotent camera that shouldn't be there that they're not actually using.
I don't
That's
remember that in
breaking the rules.
Cloverfield. I thought the whole thing was all the
There were a
video
couple that were dicey.
that were kind of like,
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's filming that. But they did a pretty good job because I mean, I'm looking for that though. But it was a good one, but it was a little almost too much shaky. But I did.
I'll tell
like it.
you a film that kind of has similar DNA that did do that weird break between found footage was a movie that I just love, District 9,
Mm,
which starts off with, uh, found footage, I guess. It's
hmm.
like a documentary
Yeah.
type of a thing, like The Office.
Yeah.
And they're going through this found footage kind of like it's sort of exposition at the beginning of the film about what's happening in the world
Hmm.
and these organizations that are
It's
trying
like
to deal with this situation.
televised footage, sort of in a way.
Yeah, and there's like lower
News.
third graphic news
Yeah.
graphics, and there's people addressing the camera directly,
Hmm.
and it's an interesting thing, but somewhere in there, it's kind of almost hard to put your finger on exactly when it happens,
Hmm.
but at some point it goes from that into regular movie type world, and then it stays there. I think it goes back into a couple briefly here
Yeah.
and there, but that movie had also had an edge of reality to it.
Yeah.
Neil Blomkamp, he's
He's
good.
great director.
He is, but he's sort of he's sort of like M. Night Shyamalan, who kind of makes these brilliant things, and then you're like so excited for his next one. You watch it and you want to like it so
Yeah.
much, but I couldn't really like Chappie.
No, Chappie was a little bit too far. You didn't care about characters. It wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't tried. It was a little too contrived for me. I didn't like that
I
one
know, and
either.
it's like pop rappers being actors, and it kind of didn't work for me.
I felt like a music video for some reason. I kept seeing it as like precursor to a music video.
Yeah, and there's
But
sort
he
of an
can be
acting
great.
style that some people have that just, I mean, it's not like they're terrible actors, but there is this sort of self-awareness that
Yeah.
pop stars have when you put them
Yeah.
in films sometimes, like they're a performing man,
Yeah.
and it didn't work for me.
He has a series of short films that were great
Yeah.
on Netflix. I forget what it was called. They have a strange name. It's more like the name of the studio putting out the short film. But
Yeah, I can't
look
remember
that
now
up for
either.
Neil Blomkamp short
Yeah.
films Netflix, and you'll find it. But I definitely highly recommend that. And Sigourney Weaver's in it in a couple of the episodes. So that's really good. But those are really nice. I mean, I'm like, why is this not a film? Like they're so
Yeah.
beautifully done, like gorgeous special effects. Like these were not super low budget things. When I say short films, I mean like half an hour, but fully formed films. Like they
Oh,
aren't these little half ass.
he's a incredible conceptual designer
Yeah,
himself, and he
he
does
is.
his own special effects. He knows where that stuff comes from.
Hmm.
He knows how it gets done, and so he knows the capabilities and the limits of it.
Yeah,
So when you see special effects in his movies,
yeah.
they're perfect because
Hmm.
the director was directly involved,
That's right.
and that's a certainly a horror sci-fi film.
Hmm.
Cloverfield.
Yeah,
It is a sort of depressing film, but
a little
I
bit.
love it.
Oh, but I think if you're gonna be apocalyptic about it, you got to be
Yeah.
apocalyptic about it. I don't like when they kind of cop out and pretend like it didn't happen or people survive when they should be surviving. It's like that's
Or that
okay.
there's no consequences to that kind of thing. Like, if
Exactly.
you abuse people and
Exactly.
whatever. But those are examples of sort of found footage-ish
Hmm.
science fiction horror films.
Yeah.
What's next on your list?
I'm just gonna pick a really obscure one. It's called 13B. It's an
Oh,
Indian film. It's from, let me see, it was in 2009.
nice.
And it's a really cool kind of almost surreal take on uh like homebound horror in a way. So what's happening is his family's obsessed with this kind of soap opera. This businessman, he's and they start realizing as they're watching the soap opera that the stuff is starting to really happen in their household. And so he starts trying to figure out like is it predicting it? Are they playing into it somehow? Like it has this great sort of surreal, life versus virtual life feel to it. And
Right.
it's got this whole kind of haunting vibe and it's really well done. It's got, some great actors in it. Just unusual too, just to see a different culture responding to like horror like that, like a kind of not really found footage, but that kind of genre, like a
Yeah.
genre of, hey, here's horror and we're gonna do this. I see the husband, beating his wife in this terrible soap opera. Does that mean I'm gonna beat my wife? Like, and of course the interpretation of what's happening and what they're seeing doesn't necessarily always play out literally in the life. Like
Uh,
he sees the husband on the show carrying this bloody sledgehammer And so
Right.
he's like, "Oh fuck, do I kill my whole family?" So he's getting worried, like, what would make me do that? Like, so he's
Right.
starting to freak out, you know. So it's got a great, like, kind of supernatural vibe like that. And I get kind of goosebumpy thinking about it. 'Cause it's, like,
Oh,
super creepy. Really well done though, and
sounds
super
kind of
low budget.
Twilight Zone-ish, like
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of Twilight Zone. That's true. I think the English version. There's also one called "Fear Has a New Address." I think is also the name for it if you're trying to find it. I think it's on Netflix, I'm pretty sure. But
okay.
let's see what it shows. The since I feel like I'm not explaining it very well, the log line is a man experiences a supernatural current at his newly purchased apartment. A soap opera being telecast exclusively on his TV shows the future of his family. So it's even a soap opera no one else has heard of. It's just
But
happening
it
on their TV.
but it's not him in the soap opera, right? It's
They're
like a
actors.
different family, but
Yeah, it's a
similar to
different
his own
actors.
family.
Yes, it's a whole
That's
dynamic. It's
that's
actually really cool.
interesting.
It's directed by Vikram Kumar, and it stars Vic, let's see, what's I thought it was a different guy here. Hold on, Matt Happen. Directed by, we'll cut that part. Directed by Vikram Kumar.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like one of those kind of creepy, self-referential, meta
Yes,
kind of
kind of
me.
technology. What is our our reliance on technology and trusting it, and like what if it try start technology starts kind of making a move? Like what's your reaction to it? Like do you believe in it? Do you trust it? Like just kind of an interesting, cool
Kind of a
tech horror, I guess.
slightly Black Mirror type
Yes.
of idea,
Yes.
story idea,
Exactly.
which always to me reminds me of the Twilight Zone updated
Yeah.
to the present situation. And
Hmm.
you know, if you're gonna, Twilight Zone had things like that's a great poster.
Yeah.
But the Twilight Zone had things that were referential to the
Hmm.
times, to their times, and Black Mirror references now, and
Right.
the idea of seeing yourself on in a television show, or feeling like it's a reference to your life or
Yeah.
influencing your life. That's a very meta, social media thing
Yeah.
where everybody shares
Hmm.
everything, and you kind of do, you go into social media, you can sort of look into people's lives, and
Totally.
people can look into your life if you let them.
Yeah.
And
So what you got?
like what was that movie with um I can't remember where the guy finds out that his whole life is a movie. Jim
Oh, the
Carrey.
Jim Carrey movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what that's called.
Yeah. I can't remember. It's so long ago. But
There's so many movies we've seen between that and now.
I know. It was but that was kind of that was sort of an early version of that sort
Yeah.
of scary idea, cuz
Hmm.
you do kind of sometimes think about it, and I mean, when I was a little kid, I used to have this weird nightmare that my family wasn't really my family, and that I was the only I was the only real person, and that
Oh, okay.
every other person in the world would only come to life when I was around them. You know what I mean? That kind of
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have that weird feeling when they're young, and I think there's these sort of self-referential media meta type
Yeah.
films sometimes that have a visceral effect on us, because I think deep
Yeah.
down we all kind of suspect that maybe we're living in a movie, or we're living in some sort of
Yeah.
simulation. There's all this scientific speculation about maybe we live in a simulation, or like
Yeah.
the idea you spend enough time walking around in a video game, you kind of start feeling like you are there, that you
Right.
exist in there. And
Hmm.
I think anything that addresses that is interesting. I'd love to
Yeah.
see a film that really accurately addresses what it feels like to get involved in a video game, which some books have. I mean, that's the whole cyberpunk thing, and the whole William Gibson idea of, in
Hmm.
Tron, they
Yeah.
enter the metaverse, or whatever it's called. But
Hmm.
that's an interesting thing to explore, I think.
Hmm. Okay. What you got next?
Well, I remember there was a movie not too long ago that everybody loved, and I loved it too, called Parasite, that was directed by Bong Joon-ho, and I totally recommend Parasite. But he made a movie earlier in 2006 called The Host,
Yep.
which, if you like Parasite, which if you saw it, you very likely liked it, you will
Yep.
probably really like The Host. it made by the same director. It's a Korean film, and it is a monster movie. It's scary in the fact that there is a monster running around,
Mhm.
and it's also funny. It's also bizarre and strange. It
Very
doesn't
strange
do
tonally. Like it
yeah,
jumps around, which is I mean, even Parasite did that in a way.
right.
He's got a little more confidence as a filmmaker, but I feel like this kind of opened the door to me, like for Korean films in general, like
Yeah.
how commercial and fun they were, and how they really tied themselves to like the concepts of their genres. Like this
Yeah.
kind of big monster kaiju almost film also has humor and it has a big budget Hollywood look to it, and
It
it
doesn't
really
go where you think
funny
it's going though.
characters, like a really funny protagonist that you're rooting for,
Yeah.
but he's just kind of a dork, and he's like, "I'm the hero." What?
Yeah.
It's actually really good. I
It does
enjoyed it.
unexpected things, which I always like in a movie. I mean,
Yeah,
you think it's going to be this, but it's not.
yeah,
It is a movie about a giant monster that attacks, but it's so much more than that.
yep.
It's very fun. But, if you want to see a movie about a giant monster that is attacking, it's also that, and it's also quite good at that.
That's all right. Very good at that. So,
Yeah.
highly recommend it. And just in general, Korean films, and especially Korean horror films, are fantastic. So,
Yeah.
especially crime dramas too, they're great.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
definitely explore Korean films if you want to. So we're trying to do a lot of different types of films because it's not just America that gets horror right.
Right.
They're all over the world. Um,
Yes.
so, and speaking of all over the world, let's stay overseas, shall we? I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about Martyrs. Now, I'm going to talk about
Ah.
Martyrs with like a caveat, which is this is horror, advanced horror viewing. Do not watch this movie if you're kind of like the Conjuring fan. Do not watch this
Right.
movie. It's way, way beyond that. This was even hard for me to watch, and I love horror, but it's
Yeah.
super brutal. It's French. It has that classic thing that French horror has, which they don't want to just show you horror. They want to give it like an existential meaning. Like
Right.
no one has to suffer this much and see this much terrible, terrible brutality without having like this transcendent moment. So that's sort of what this is about. Like, how can you force the transcendent moment? How can you bring a transformative, enlightenment to someone without completely torturing them till they're almost dead? That's basically what this is. If it was American, they would have made just some, torture porn. But in France, they made torture porn art. So that's basically what this is. So be careful when you watch this movie. That's what I'm saying.
Interesting review. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of makes me want to try or watch it again, but I don't know.
I watched it once. I don't think I can watch it more than once. I appreciated it. I appreciated
Right.
the art of it. I appreciated what they were trying to say, but it's a really hard thing to watch. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
um
I'm not really a fan of the endurance test horror films.
yeah, I
Like,
know.
how much can you take? It's
See, I
like
mean, this is a log line to tell if you even could even deal with this movie. A young woman's quest for revenge against the people who kidnapped and tormented her as a child leads her and a friend who is also a victim of child abuse on a terrifying journey into a living hell of depravity. Good times.
yeah.
The entire thing is just steeped in just nastiness. Again, they give it a meaning, sort of, but it's just hardcore. So I'm just saying, this is not a fun movie. It's hardcore horror, but here we are. French horror does kind of have that edge,
Yeah.
surprisingly. There
Yeah.
you
That's a good one, I guess, for
It's
the
sorta good.
people that want to go there, on Halloween.
Yeah.
It's
If you
like
want to
that's
test your limits and say, yeah, I can watch anything, try Martyrs.
yeah, movies like that can be sort of fun when you get a bunch of people together and you're like, oh
Like,
my god, what
is
am I looking
happening?
at?
Are they really going there? They're really going there.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, just be prepared. All
yeah.
right. What you got? What's something more fun?
Well, I guess it's fun. I thought it was kind of fun. There's a director named Neil Marshall who made a film called Dog Soldiers, that was just a werewolves. It was crazy fun horror film.
Yep.
But we're talking 2000s, so I want to talk about his movie called The Descent, which is kind of addresses a fear that I've always had too, of it's a claustrophobia thing, and
Yes.
the idea of going into a cave, and it kind of I can go into caves and things like that, but it's
Not when they get really tight and small and you have to go through a little tiny corridor and hang upside down and maybe not find your way out. That's when I start getting freaked out, is I can't get my way out.
I went into a cave one time with some friends when I was really young and got into one of those situations where it was so tight, and
Mm.
the idea of going that way through this really tight place, and
Not knowing what's
supposedly
out
it
there.
opens up into a bigger room in there, but then I started thinking, but then to get back out I have to go back through this really horrible,
Ugh.
and I didn't want to go in there. So it was one of those things where I just sort of had to back myself out of this situation. And I'll have like nightmares about that still,
Yeah,
just the
hell yeah.
feeling of it, and
Yeah.
wake up in the middle of the night like, oh. And this movie addresses that, and it's kind of disorienting. It also there's like something else going on in the cave. It's not just about claustrophobia.
No.
It's about what if there was something else down in there in that cave? And
Yeah, not only is it scary
Ugh.
because it's claustrophobic and scary just to be doing this in general, it's like, what if you're trapped down there with something that's trying to kill you, and then you're trying to find your way out of this cave and you're not even sure, so you're having to go down these unknown corridors, and are they going to lead you to a bigger place? Is it going to be even smaller? Are you then going to be trapped in a corner? I mean, terrifying claustrophobia.
And you can't get any darker than the inside of a cave if you
No,
break
there's
your
no light.
flashlight.
Oh. And then also it was directed by Neil Marshall, who also did a lot of Game of Thrones episodes.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
are some of the best ones.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing about this movie I thought was great that he did was he cast an entirely female cast.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I think it's pretty much 100%. There might be a man in there somewhere, but that was unusual because it would have been a really easy and fallback to go, we have a bunch of people going spelunking in this cave, so we get a bunch of dudes. I mean, that's
Right.
just automatically
Or
where we
boys
go.
and
The fact-
girls, so that
Yeah.
there could be sexual tension and
Yeah,
love
the fact they
triangles and
made it
whatnot.
all female cast made it even just gives it that extra edge. Like that was a
Yeah.
cool move, I thought, really savvy and very unusual. Like you just don't see that. So
Yeah.
that was really, and it was diverse cast, and that's way back before anyone had to be. So
Right.
I really, and it's also a great poster.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool poster.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. This kind of making something the shape of a skull comes up a lot in movie poster design, but you
Yeah.
hardly ever pull it off, and it never looks good. And this is always the scrap people use.
Right.
I love
The first
that.
time I noticed that was and it's something that some people haven't really, it's one of those, I was today years old when I realized the logo for Silence of the Lambs. It's the moth over her mouth, right? But
Yeah.
if you look really closely on the moth, you see a little skull, right?
Yeah,
But if you look even more closely, you realize that skull is made out of people.
that's right. Super
So
creepy.
it's like one of those formations like that one
Little
in the
Easter
design
egg.
poster.
If you look
Yeah.
close enough. Great poster design.
Yeah.
So I want to go to, speaking of women in film,
Ah.
let's talk about American Psycho. So the thing that's fascinating about American Psycho, it is super hardcore.
Yeah.
It's really intense, incredible performance from Christian
Yeah.
Bale. Just great, just totally disappearing into this character. He's so great. And there's so much humor also. I mean, I remember reading this book and I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit. Like it was so hardcore. And then when you see the film, you're dreading it, but then they do it with such good humor. It's so well done. And there's always like this little wink, even though it's really brutal.
Yeah.
Nobody realizes this was directed by a woman. Like it's one of those things like, what? Like when you think about it, it just doesn't feel like what people think a woman doing horror would feel like. That's what's so great
Right.
about it. Like, yes, women can bring the horror and it can feel very masculine. And I think too, because she's able to kind of in a way envelop that toxic masculinity, which she has in spades, right?
That's what this movie's about. Yeah.
So I think
it
it's
was
really
done-
something a woman can relate to, just so she's able to look at it from like an outside perspective on how it affects everyone around him.
Yeah.
That maybe a man wouldn't be able to.
Well, the book, I remember reading the book too when it came out and thinking, and then when I heard there was a movie coming up, I remember thinking, I don't know if this is going to be a thing that you can make a movie out of and still have the impact that the book had, the meaning and, the subcontext and all that kind of stuff. Because it's not a normal, it's not like just a story about American Psycho. It's about America. You know what I mean? It's about a certain thing. I mean, you watch it and you get what you get out of it, but a lot of people who watch it get what you just said, the thing about toxic masculinity, which I don't know if it was a term back then.
It wasn't.
But it was certainly a concept back then.
Yeah.
And the idea of people, I mean, I've known people like like this, and not to this extent, but but I think she brought the idea of a lot of people who you encounter in certain industries,
Mm-hmm.
like the entertainment industry, for instance.
Yeah.
And I've worked with people who had these kind of one guy in particular. I'm not going to say who, but not famous, but known-ish kind of a guy. And he reminded me so much of this character in his obsession with these it's a style of obsession
Yeah.
where your business card, the business card scene is of course legendary in
Love
this,
it.
but where your business card represents you in a way that's where I don't want to get too explicit about it, but the idea that your giant car is compensating for something or that kind of thing, where in other words your business card represents the intensity of your masculinity, you know what I mean, and where
Yeah.
your car is an extension of your physical body and and it's hard to explain, and that's why you have to have a book or a movie that's this thick, that you read and you dig into this film and that book, and you're like, you can come to a sort of an understanding of this.
Yeah, well, because I think, when we talk about, like, I even hate to say these words that we use now, but they're like the gender norms where
Right.
a man's masculinity is completely, and directly connected to his level of success. So
Right.
when he's like showing his business card, he's like, look at my business card, which he's like saying, look how big my dick is.
It's
And so everyone else
the
is like, but
competitive
mine's
thing.
bigger. Look how
Yeah.
much better mine is. So he's doing all that. So each time he's like sort of in a way kind of upended by someone else's success, he has to then amplify something to make up for that intense feeling of failure, even though there
Right.
isn't any. So he was homicidally like compensating for any of his insecurities and lack of success that he
Yeah.
perceived he had, which he didn't. So, but that's the thing too. He's also the ultimate unreliable narrator, and that was part of the book too. You didn't know, like, how much of this is real or in his head. Like,
Yeah.
is he really successful or is he not? Like, is he really killing people? Is he not? Like,
Right.
the whole thing is almost more like a fairy tale in a weird way. So,
And you know what would be sort of a modern equivalent of this, or it's a subset of this? I mean,
mhm.
the character that he plays in this still exists,
Oh yeah,
still out there.
no,
But
no, there's going on.
there's sort of
One
a
was president, I think.
yeah, yeah. But what I was going to say is that there's sort of a new version of that. Not really a new version, but another version, a subset,
Yeah.
a tangent from him, which is these people who collect like military style firearms and dress up
Mhm.
in military
Yeah.
body armor,
Mhm.
and they've got all their insignia patches, and they use they're not in the military, and they're the kind of people who used to cry and complain about somebody, stolen valor.
Yeah.
They used to scream so loud about that, like somebody who was pretending
Yeah.
to be in the military or
Mhm.
claiming that they had been in the military. But these guys dress up like army men, like military,
Yeah.
and they collect these military firearms, and they are so proud of the fact that they have the biggest gun, and they have 25 of them. And that is, I mean, when you look at it, it's ridiculous, and you think these people just look like scared little boys who can't leave the house without their Shogun Warrior toys or whatever. And but then another part of you is like, it's sort of sad because of the way they've been raised. They've been raised in a way to believe that that represents them, and the idea of respect is going off on a real tangent from this film. But the idea of respect, to one type of person, it's like, if I have a gun, they respect me because I have a gun.
Yeah.
But to
Well, it's a
another
very
kind of
masculine
person, that doesn't.
extension.
Right. But to another person, that is not respect. That's just a tool that you happen to be holding.
Well, it's intimidation.
Yeah.
It's overcompensation. It's all of those things. So
Respect comes from what the person is, the person's quality, their character, their strength of character.
a
And
lot of people don't know how to express that, especially a lot of men think that, they get caught up in like what they've been taught by a lot of Western culture, what a man is supposed to be. And I think a
Right.
lot of people just buy into it, which, that's what's so great about American Psycho is it really does show you that patriarchal, you know, overblown insanity,
It was
basically.
one of the first things to address it so directly and in a
Yeah.
way that was like, I know that guy. I know
Yep.
that syndrome.
They're everywhere.
I know where he's coming from.
That's right. So next on our list,
I don't know. I don't really have anything else. I mean,
I have a
there was
ton.
some 2000s stuff
Mhm.
that there's things like Donnie Darko that
Yeah, we
was
can run down
it's a
some stuff.
little bit of a horror-ish film,
Kind of a
but
little
kind of
gothic
science
horror,
fiction.
like fantasy weirdness, and I
Yeah.
love the line from this film. And I recommend everyone watch this. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Where they have the where you see in the movie theater and the guy sitting next to him in this rabbit suit, as you can see in this poster, and he's
Right.
like, "Why are you wearing that stupid rabbit suit?" And then the rabbit turns to him, "Why are you wearing the stupid man suit?" So
Yeah.
I love that idea because like, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
what are you? Like this sort of like trying to call out each other on what they are and who they are and what they mean just by looking at each other. It's great.
Right.
It's a great. It's one of a Jake Gyllenhaal. Was it Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah.
First movie. It's one of his first movies. I think it
I
was him.
think it was. Yeah, he's a kid in it. He's like really
I know.
young.
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking it was him, right? Because he was so young.
Yeah. I
And
know he's
then
done so many things since then. It's
so
like that's
many.
a different person in that movie.
And then there's the classy horror that we have, which is something like Let the Right One In, which
Oh
is,
yeah, yeah.
was
That was a great one.
groundbreaking at the time. Like just this quiet, sort of realistic, like what it would be like if a real vampire existed and how it would be kind of more like a predator. So you
Right.
can almost see vampires just as normal people because some people are just human predators, and that's sort of what they made this vampire out to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Look, I can do this.
uh, ah. And then we have okay, that's it. Then back to slasher, I thought
Oh
this was
yeah.
one of the scariest movies I've ever seen at the time, and it's sort of a slasher home invasion mix because it's about someone being preyed upon by this sort of faceless evil, but
Right.
it's kind of a bigger story about that thing we were talking about earlier about having your what should be a safe space invaded and how you would
Right.
survive. Like, can you outsmart these people? And the greatest thing about this film is usually I'm watching a horror movie and I'm like, these people are so fucking dumb. It's
Right.
like they're gonna like, I have an idea. I'm gonna go outside and see who these people are, and then of course they get killed instantly. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
This movie, every time I was trying to think this is what they should do, they would either do that or do something way smarter than what I just thought of. I'm like,
Right. I
wow, this
like
is
it
a
when that
movie that's
happens.
actually smart. I
Yeah.
want to see these movies and have people show me what is the best way to get out of this situation and not be a dumb fuck and fall
Yeah.
and die. And this was really well done. Great actors in it. Liv Ullmann's in this.
Yeah.
And there's some great character development with these, masks on these people. There's actually a few people that are kind of like creeping around their house trying to get in. It was really, really
Yeah.
well done. Um, and then we also have this is another great one.
Yeah. This is an interesting choice. It's not
Super low
really
budget.
horror film, but it's
I it sort of is. It sort of is. Like it's one of those like indie, super low budget, but gives you just makes you feel like something bigger is happening, and it totally kind of blows your mind a little bit.
and it is a little scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very scary.
Yeah. That's a
Well,
great one. That
yeah,
is we could go on and on about this one. It's a
yeah, like
time travel movie done in a way that was pretty innovative. Somebody
yeah,
really put in a lot of thought into this
yeah.
film.
Yeah, it's kind of like if someone was going to develop this technology just like in their garage, like Apple computers,
Yeah.
and they're experimenting and trying stuff out, and it was very low key weirdness of science of like experimenting and trying it, and it all feels very real and grounded. It's not this big grand time travel. It's
Right.
this little creepy mathematical problem that turns into a real problem that it's great. It's great. It turns
They
your brain
discover it
inside out.
by dropping little bits of paper and they
Yeah, I love
move
it.
more slowly than they're supposed to and they're like,
So
"What
weird. I
how can
love
we
that.
turn that into something?"
It's those little things that could change the world that you don't really notice. It's not the big
Right.
explosions. Well, some are, but so that,
Yeah.
and then I thought this was just a great, great remake, and it stands on its own. I think is one of the best zombie horror movies I've ever seen.
I agree. It's a good one.
So good.
Yep.
Directed by Zack Snyder, I believe.
Yes.
One of his best movies. I think it was his second movie, I believe. You were talking about
Yeah.
Watchmen earlier, same director.
Yeah,
Um,
Watchmen is another one that's kind of got some scary horror, bloody
yeah.
elements to it. Not a bad Halloween movie if you want to watch
Yeah.
a sort of dark superhero film.
More
I like
more
Zack Snyder.
superhero with some horror elements than horror, but very definitely more grounded and creepy.
Sort of
But this is
brutal,
great
yeah.
because there's some humor in this. There's
Yeah,
some really really smart stuff and a credit sequence that's fantastic. And the whole
yeah,
movie changes its meaning if you don't stay through the credits. Like the credits
right.
gives you a little bit more information each time,
Yep.
and then a post credit ending that just wraps it up.
Yeah.
So definitely stay through the credits.
It's a good one. It is a in the vast landscape of
Mhm.
zombie material that's out there.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorites.
yeah,
And another one of my favorites is also called Dawn of the Dead. It was the one
yeah.
that was directed by George Romero that we talked about
In the last episode,
last episode, or second
70s.
70s episode,
Yeah.
which look for it in our lists or wherever it is. It's
Just listen to all and watch all the episodes, and then you will find it in there somewhere.
yeah, and let us know which ones we missed. I think we probably
Yeah.
missed quite a few,
Yeah.
but
We
we
can
didn't.
wrap it up with a couple. Like I love Trick or Treat just as a crowd pleaser. If you want to watch it
Yeah,
on Halloween, it's a great anthology. It's one of the solid, probably one of the best Halloween anthologies I've ever seen. I watch
yeah,
it more than once, and I never do that. So I like it because it gives you some good surprises, some genuine like real scares, and they all kind of time together in a really smart way. So it's definitely
right.
worth
I
watching
love
that.
anthologies too. I
Oh, me
love
too.
short stories. I love regular movies, but if you can tell me a story that gives me the goosebumps in like 20 minutes or something,
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yep.
the brief stories like that. I think
Yeah,
that's
the
the
efficiency of it. And then
yeah, it goes back to like the classic Twilight Zone we were talking about.
And I guess the big finale can be Pan's Labyrinth because Guillermo del Toro deserves that. And this was a magical, beautiful, creepy, gorgeous, just
Yeah.
fantastic, weird film. That's kind of really fun and an offbeat film to watch for Halloween.
Yeah, Guillermo knows how to do the beautiful visuals and the story too. Some people
Mhm.
just know how to do the visuals, but he knows how to do all of it. And
He
I think
does.
that's one thing that's going to keep people watching his movies for a long time because I
Hmm.
mean they are timeless, and
Yeah.
things like The Orphanage and that we've talked about, and things that he
Hmm.
produced, things that he directed, and things that he produced, things that
Yeah.
he was involved with are
Exactly.
generally good,
Yep.
and
Solid
they're
always.
going to be good 20 years from now too,
Yeah.
and beyond.
And I also recommend, I'm not sure when it came out, is Devil's Backbone, which is a great little
Yes.
horror film too. Is a good more of a ghost story, and
Yeah.
it's just so sad and beautiful and yeah.
Beautiful again. Yeah.
So yeah,
Everything.
his stuff's always so fantastic. It's just a whole different mind. Like you will not mistake his films from anyone else. He does not
Right.
look like anyone else.
And Hellboy still holds up, you know?
Yeah, and Hellboy. So there you go. Horror from 2000s. We'll do the
Yeah.
90s next
The
time.
2000s. Yeah, maybe give us some suggestions for the 90s. That's a
Yeah, let's
thing
talk about
that
90s too.
we were looking through it, and then we said, let's just look at the 2000s
Let's just do
instead.
2000s because there's some good ones. Okay, so thanks you guys for listening this far, and I hope you have a great Halloween.
Yeah. Everybody stay safe. And if you're going out into the, trick or treating, make sure you wear really bright, reflective Halloween costumes, right? Isn't that what they
No,
used to say in the TV commercials?
yeah, which is never scary, so don't do that.
like,
But
with
yeah,
big flashing
maybe a
lights all over it.
flashlight or something, some glittery thing you can carry. You can turn off anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the best idea is to go to those street parties. Like here in Los Angeles, we have some of the craziest Halloween street parties
I
that
know they're nuts.
it's just so fun. Yeah,
So fun. So
it's a
happy
it's a
Halloween!
happy time of year.
Happy Halloween, everyone!
Thanks for joining us.